Welcome to Business Reporter's The Future of Fraud Prevention campaign. I'm Rachel Hicks. As the volume of online trade grows, we're becoming more vulnerable to fraud. And yet no one in the fraud prevention market is currently offering a truly pay-as-you-go SaaS that can be implemented at speed or consumed at any time of the day. This is the key differentiating factor, because back when today's guests and founders of SEON, CEO Tomasz Kadar and COO Bence Jedrzejczak were working on a crypto exchange, they would have been happy to have had a chance to have the tools available when they were needed. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you've been targeted by fraud. When that happened, what did you find out and what did you do about it?
This was back in our university years. We were working on a crypto exchange and we were looking for a solution as a small customer that would solve our fraud issue. And we realized that these solutions out there are not focused on ease of integration, accurate results, and cost effectiveness. So we built our own solution based on this foundation, and here we are today.
We have seen that the other solution providers on the market doesn't offer specific features we were looking for. They didn't have a transparent pricing on their website, they couldn't offer free trial, and they asked for specific in-advance fees before ever sampling their product. So we could go on the route by integrating an ID verification provider. That is the solution in today's world for many crypto exchanges. But we have realized that actually this would create a friction in an onboarding process, which can then lead to churn and decrease user experience. And also, it's not a bulletproof solution because anyone can go on the dark web and buy a stolen ID scan for a couple of dollars. And also, these ID verification providers can charge up to even €2 or dollars for verification. So we wanted to create something that is based on frictionless and invisible collectible data points, such as the email address, the IP, the phone number, and device data.
So you effectively identified a gap in the market. There's always been fraud, there have always been small companies that maybe need to prevent that. Why did nobody make the link before you? Why were you the first, do you think?
We were the very first ones, and I truly believe it's because all these solution providers out there that are great are focused on enterprise clients. And back when we had our own issue of fraud after starting to accept credit card payments in our crypto exchange a couple of years ago, we couldn't find a solution that we can quickly get our hands on, that would have a transparent pricing model, would be easy to integrate, and they would have had the relevant feature set. So they weren't addressing our market as a small, medium enterprise client. And so this is still the issue, and that is the main reason why we are behind the ethos of democratizing fraud fighting. And we truly believe that we want to make it as easily accessible and available to as many merchants and operators out there as possible.
So if you want to make it accessible, how does your solution change the background checks on the validity of an email, for example?
Actually, we access and collect all the accessible public data points regarding an email or phone or IP or device. So an email address can reveal thousands of data points about you. We can tell whether your domain is a free provider or if it's a disposable one, when was the domain registered and who registered this domain. We can check your presence on more than 35 different online and social sites. And the more of those you have, it means less risk for an online business. We've seen correlation in fraud prevention regarding missing social media footprint can mean a much higher probability of fraudster interacting on your website. And also, we check if the email address was part of any data breach. It can reveal when someone has already used this email address in the past. So if it doesn't have any data breach presence, it could be a fraudster who has just registered this email address maybe a couple of minutes before they would attempt to push a fraudulent transaction on your online business.
So how far can some basic data, like emails that we're talking about, work when it comes to fraud prevention?
Tamas has just mentioned that an email address or phone number in today's world is like a digital passport. You use it to register on various social media platforms, on various websites. So it does turn out, and this is feedback from our customers, that when we take a look at that social media footprint, there is a very high correlation between the lack of background info and the risk of fraud. And this is essentially what manually the fraud and risk managers would be checking, copy and pasting the email address to find out more information about those consumers. And we're doing that in an automated fashion in a matter of a second or less.
And if we look at diagnostics, wherever there are diagnostics, there are false positives. So how do you tackle that problem?
In case of fraud prevention, false negatives and false positives are always a very important point for the customers. So what we try to do is offer a feedback loop through an API, which we call the label API, and also through the interface. On the graphical user interface, our customers can mark and reclassify transactions if they are false negative or false positives. And then our machine learning algorithm is a completely white box and transparent one, which means that we actually suggest and recommend new rules in form of decision tree based suggestions to our clients. And that is completely transparent, understandable, and they can see which rules would trigger behind this decision. So they can either accept or decline those suggestions. So ultimately it always stays under our client's supervision, under human supervision. And this is also in aligned with the EU directives in the future, which they have already mentioned that white box and transparent machine learning models will be the one which can be used by online businesses.
I think important to mention at this stage is two different business models that are relevant in our industry, and one of them being the chargeback guarantee model, where if you have a transaction of say 100 GBP, then you would pay a certain percentage in order for that transaction to be fraud checked. And ours is a different take. We charge a micro fee per transaction, which is a couple of cents. And based on that, we're able to determine whether the transaction is fraudulent or not, but we don't offer a chargeback guarantee.
So looking into the future a little bit, if we were to look at how attitudes towards fraud prevention may change in the next 5 years or so, how do you see that?
I think as businesses are moving online and we're seeing digitalization accelerate, especially with the pandemic here, we are seeing a higher number of consumers being included in this, in terms of buying online, checking out online, and being involved.
So what 3 points would you like people who are watching today to take away with them?
I would like to see a better community being built around fraud prevention from the merchants and operators and online business side. I would like to see these companies sharing information around the fraud trends that they are seeing, and we should be doing a better job of that, and we are trying to facilitate some of that in terms of building that community. Secondly, I definitely want to see more awareness, as I mentioned, being built around this, because this is a massive issue.
I would say the third point is to encourage online business owners to sample and try different solution providers out there, because all of them has different advantages and disadvantages. They have different product offerings, so one might not make sense for their business, but one might help a lot. So I would really suggest to try those products out there and go with the best one that makes the most sense for their online business.
Thank you both for coming in and talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.